my channel. My name is Lily Rebecca. If you're new here, welcome. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Today we are doing a law school Q&A where I'm going to answer all of the most asked questions that I get on my TikTok and on my Instagram about law school, the LSAT, the admissions process, and specifically about my first week of law school that I just completed. I have quite a few questions from y'all, so let's go ahead and just jump right in, starting with questions about the LSAT exam. The first question I get all the time is, how long did I study for the LSAT? Now, I personally studied for about 3 months. I would say that that's on the lower end of the amount of time that I hear people studying for. Some people will study for 6 months or even longer than that. I felt like 3 months was good for me. I would highly recommend taking a diagnostic exam and seeing where you're starting at. There's a really good one on Khan Academy. It's completely free and it is endorsed by LSAT, which is the organization that puts out the LSAT exam and does all of the applications for law school. So it's legit, it's free, it's a really good tool to use to find out kind of where you are and how much you might need to study and improve to reach your goal score. I would say give yourself at least 3 to 6 months to study so that you can feel really confident going into that exam. Another question I get all the time about the LSAT exam is what materials I personally use to study. I relied heavily upon the Khan Academy LSAT study tool, and I felt like that was really sufficient for me. I felt it was really helpful. I had a good idea of what to expect on the test, what sections I needed to work on, how to work on those sections, and how to improve my score. I also got books of old LSAT exams that I would take as practice tests untimed. I would take the timed ones on Khan Academy, and then I would do untimed practice questions from those books. And I felt like that really gave me a good idea of what to expect on the exam, and I did feel prepared. That was my experience. I know there are people who need more of a structured study plan, and in that case, Khan Academy does give you a structured study plan, but if you need something more structured than that and more accountability, there are courses that you can take specifically to prepare for the LSAT. However, don't feel like if you don't take a course, you can't do well on the exam. There are plenty of people, myself included, who took the LSAT exam without taking a formal course beforehand and were able to achieve our LSAT score goals. Another question I got about the LSAT was, what are my tips and tricks for being successful on test day? And I definitely learned from experience on this one. I actually took the exam twice. The first time I took the exam, I was super stressed out. I swear I held my breath the entire time. I didn't sleep beforehand. I didn't eat breakfast beforehand. All of those things contributed to me not doing as well as I wanted to do on my exam. So my biggest tips are get a good night's sleep before the test. Do not study the day before the LSAT exam. You're not gonna learn anything new on that day before, and honestly, you're probably just gonna fatigue yourself. The LSAT exam is extremely mentally fatiguing, so if you're taking practice exams the day before your real exam, you're gonna be tired. Don't do it. Give yourself a break, study up until that day before, but take the day before off and just relax. Also, make sure you eat breakfast. My stomach was growling so loud throughout my LSAT exam, and all I could think about was that for part of the test for my first exam. It was so loud. It was like a freaking animal, and I was like, all I could think about was everybody in the room was like gonna be distracted by the sound of my stomach. Eat breakfast. Eat breakfast. Even if it's something little, get something in your stomach. And third tip is make sure you breathe. Like, take deep breaths when you're going into the exam, when you're sitting and waiting for it to start, in between sections. Make sure you're getting enough oxygen, okay? Your brain needs oxygen to work. I know that sounds so silly, but I swear I held my breath. I was like dizzy during my exam because I wasn't breathing. Make sure you breathe, like be intentional about your breathing. And also try not to panic as much as I did going into my first exam. If you have taken practice exams, the LSAT is gonna look exactly like your practice exams. Nothing is gonna be surprising, nothing is gonna jump out at you. If you adequately prepared, you studied, you took your practice test, you did practice questions, nothing is gonna be surprising or foreign to you. It's going to look exactly how you expect. I was really scared that I was gonna walk in and the test was gonna look like completely different than my practice test had. Don't have that worry. It is exactly like your practice tests. All right, jumping to the admissions process and the application process. I got several questions on Instagram about what my application timeline looked like. I think that's really helpful information to have when you are thinking about applying for law school. So I'm gonna walk you through how it went for me and what my tips are, how not to make the mistakes I did, and how to get the most out of your application process. So full transparency, I applied to law school for 2 different cycles. So I applied for the 2018 cycle and the 2020 cycle. I did get into school in the 2018 cycle. So it's not to say that like I messed up so badly the first time that I didn't get in at all, but I didn't make the most out of my application process the first time. I didn't apply early. My applications didn't go in until November, December, January, and that definitely cut down on my ability to get scholarships and also to be in that first group of people that was evaluated. I really feel like applying early is hugely helpful and will boost your chances at getting into the school and getting a good scholarship. So biggest tip is apply as early as you can. Saying that, make sure you try to take your LSAT with plenty of time to take it a second time even before you're planning on applying. So most of the applications open in September and October. Plan on taking your LSAT at least in like June or July at the very latest. That way, if you need to, you can take like the August or September LSAT and still get your applications in before November. I would highly recommend, if you can, getting your applications in before November. So yeah, my first round, I didn't get my applications until November, like the end of November, December, January, some of them. This second round, I got my applications in literally the first week they opened. Like the first week of September, my applications were in and I was done and good to go, which meant that in a rolling application process like law school is, my application was in the first batch of applications that was looked at and evaluated, which I felt was really helpful. And based on my results between the 2 sections, I definitely had better results the second round. Also, some schools will offer an admissions interview if you are in the earlier group of applicants. So make sure when you're looking at what schools you're going to apply to, find out if they offer an admissions interview and make sure that your application is in time to do that, because I really 100% think it is worthwhile to do the interview. Now, in terms of the rest of the process and how it goes, I will be so honest, it is a really difficult waiting game. I got my first response back. So I applied in September, got my first response back in the middle of December, and that was actually on the early side. And a lot of times you won't hear till January, February. Some of them I didn't even hear back until March. And if you get put on the wait list, it can be even longer than that. So just be prepared to be patient and don't panic if you don't hear back right away. It is totally normal not to get a response for like several months at a time, and you probably won't. That doesn't mean you didn't get in. Often they just haven't even accepted or rejected anyone yet. So most of the schools are going to start doing that in like December, January, February time period, depending on when you applied. Again, it is rolling admissions, so you're going to hear back in relation to when you applied. So the earlier you apply, the earlier you're likely to hear back. So keeping up with the whole application process, one of the questions I got on TikTok was how I decided where I was going to apply. Now, I did it in a very formulaic manner. This is not how everybody does it, but basically what I did was I took my GPA and my LSAT score and I kind of compared it to different schools kind of based on their ranking, and I saw where my numbers were fitting in. And then I decided on a range based on the ranking of schools that I was comfortable applying in. So for example, if you have a certain LSAT and a certain GPA, you could find that that is kind of the middle range in the 40 to 50 range of schools, or the 30 to 40 range, or the 50 and above range. And then what I did with that range was decide what schools in that range were in places that I would want to live, would want to practice after law school, and those were the ones that I applied to. Now, I did apply to a very small number of schools this second round because I felt pretty confident after the first round with where I felt I was going to get in and kind of how that process was going to go. But most people do apply to quite a few schools because you just never know. And especially this last cycle and the next few cycles to come, it is going to be very competitive because there are so many people applying to law school. So just give yourself a wide net, give yourself some safety schools where your numbers are kind of well above their averages, and definitely don't be afraid to reach. Even though numbers are very important in the law school application process, I'm not gonna lie, they're important. Your LSAT is important, your GPA is important, and those are probably gonna be the first things that schools are gonna look at. However, you never know who might see something in your application, even if your numbers aren't quite there, that they may see something in you that they think is going to be an asset to the school for whatever reason. So don't be afraid to reach, even if your numbers are not quite there. It is still possible. Just make sure that you're making good use out of the rest of your application. Make sure that you're listing all of your service activities, all of your work experience. Write a really good personal statement. I can't speak highly enough about how important a personal statement is. That is what's going to set you apart if you're kind of on the borderline. Okay, now let's jump into actual law school and what that's like. I just finished my first week, and one of the questions I got was about my favorite classes, like what I'm taking and what my favorite classes have been and what the hardest class has been. So right now I'm taking torts, criminal law, contracts, legal writing and analysis, and legal research. I had absolutely no say in what classes I took, as is the case with most first-year law students. You pretty much are handed a schedule and that's what you do. But those are my 5 classes this semester. And so far, contracts is by far the hardest. It is definitely the hardest material to read. It is probably, unfortunately, the least interesting to me so far, just the topic I'm not super invested in yet. But that has been the biggest struggle. Yeah. I'm also a little nervous about legal writing, but we'll see how that goes. I do like to write, so hopefully that works out for me. And then my favorite class is definitely criminal law, but I do like torts a lot too. Those 2 classes I'm really excited about. I feel like every time I go in there, like I'm learning something new, something really interesting. I love the discussions we get to have. That's one thing you should know. Law school, the classes are like pretty much all discussion based. Like your professor cold calls you. So they'll just call on you. Like you don't raise your hand. They just call on you and ask you questions. And then you have a discussion with your professor and your classmates about different cases and different rules and kind of how they can apply. And it's really interesting. It can be stressful if you don't like public speaking, but everybody has to do it and nobody's perfect at it. So just, yeah, you don't have to stress about that, honestly. Just take it kind of as it comes. And fortunately, my professors have been really great for the most part about cold calling and being really helpful if you're struggling for an answer, and really encouraging you to continue trying to find an answer and talking you through it until you do get there. That may just be lucky on my part, but I really do enjoy my professors so far. I also got asked on Instagram what the biggest difference between law school and undergrad is in terms of like the classes and the workload. I will tell you, there is not a syllabus week for law school. They threw us straight into the deep end. I have read more this past week out of my books than I probably did in an entire semester in undergrad. Now, I was a science major, so there wasn't as much reading in my major as it was for like if you were a history major or an English major. But honestly, I think we all feel like this right now based on talking to my classmates. We're all like, oh my goodness, we have read so much. There is so much reading and so much preparation for class. A lot of times with undergrad, you don't necessarily read before class. You don't come in with notes already. You are taking those notes as your professor is talking. No, in law school, you're reading, you're taking notes, and then you're going in prepared to discuss that topic with your professor. Like you've already kind of taught yourself some of the material, and they're going to clarify it for you and expand upon it. So the class prep is entirely different than it was for undergrad, at least in my experience. And the last question I'm going to answer today has been asked to me not only on TikTok and Instagram, but also by my friends and family, and that's, do I like it? And the answer is, for the most part, yes. I really enjoy being in my classes. I love the discussion. I love learning. I am very much a person who loves to learn. I feel like I'm in class and being challenged and learning new things and learning how to think in different ways and learning how to be creative with my thinking. That's really enjoyable for me. The reading, it's rough. I'm not gonna lie. There is a lot of reading. There's a lot of note taking before class. But when it comes to actually being in class and learning and applying the material, I really enjoy it. And I'm excited to continue doing that. And I really think that I'm going to enjoy being a lawyer. Like, I definitely am not scared out of the profession by my first week of school. I know it's gonna be hard. I know it's gonna be stressful. I know I'm gonna be tired, but for the most part, like I definitely feel like I'm doing something that is valuable, that's going to help people, and that I'm going to enjoy doing as a career. So that's really all I could ask after the first week. I am gonna go ahead and end the video here. I do have more questions from you guys that I wasn't able to get to today. I didn't want this video to be super, super long. So I will do another Q&A sometime in the near future. If you have other questions you want to have answered in my next Q&A, please leave them in the comments. Send them to me on Instagram or send them to me on TikTok. Also, make sure if you don't follow me on Instagram and TikTok that you do. Links are down below, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.